Sarah Mitchell stands at the magnificent cathedral doors, her heart pounding beneath layers of silk and lace, while Max, her loyal golden retriever, lets out a series of urgent barks that echo through the sacred halls. The scene before her isn't what she imagined for her perfect day. Her dog causing a commotion, the priest's face bearing an expression she can't quite read, and 200 guests shifting uncomfortably in their pews. In the next few moments, a truth will emerge that will transform not just her wedding day, but her understanding of faith, love, and the mysterious ways dogs can see what humans cannot. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning had started like any bride's dream. The historic St. Augustine Cathedral, with its soaring Gothic spires and stained glass windows, cast rainbow shadows across the bridal suite where Sarah prepared for her big day. Her mother, Eleanor, fussed with the cathedral-length veil, while her sister Jessica arranged the cascade of white roses and baby's breath in Sarah's hands. Everything seemed perfect, except for Max's unusual behavior. Max, usually the embodiment of calm and dignity, had been acting strange since dawn. The normally composed therapy dog, who had helped countless hospital patients find comfort, paced the bridal suite with increasing agitation. His golden coat, freshly groomed for the wedding, bristled slightly, and his usual warm brown eyes held an intensity Sarah had never seen before. "He's probably just picking up on your nerves, honey," Eleanor suggested, adjusting Sarah's veil for the 100th time. But Sarah knew better. In the 5 years since she'd rescued Max from the aftermath of a devastating hurricane in Florida, she'd learned to read every nuance of his behavior. This was different. Sarah's mind drifted back to that terrible day in Miami when she'd been working as the emergency response veterinarian. The Category 4 hurricane had left devastation in its wake, and among the ruins of a collapsed building, she'd found him, a terrified, injured golden retriever who'd somehow managed to save a child by pulling her under a sturdy table moments before the roof caved in. Despite his own injuries, Max had stayed with the girl until help arrived. That day had changed everything. Sarah, who'd been struggling with her own demons after losing her father to cancer just months before, found something in Max's eyes that spoke to her soul. His unwavering courage in the face of trauma, his innate desire to protect others even when hurt. It resonated with something deep inside her. The hospital where she volunteered quickly certified Max as a therapy dog, and together they began healing others, forming a bond that went beyond ordinary human-animal relationships. Father Michael, the elderly priest who'd known Sarah since childhood, had always said Max possessed an unusual gift. "Some dogs," he'd explained while watching Max comfort a grieving widow, "are old souls. They see things we can't, feel things we've forgotten how to feel." At the time, Sarah had smiled at what she thought was just a kind old man's whimsy. Now, watching Max's growing distress, those words echoed in her mind with new significance. The cathedral's ancient bell tower began to toll, marking the hour. Sarah's fiancé, Daniel Harrison, would be waiting at the altar. Daniel, a brilliant cardiac surgeon, had entered their lives 2 years ago when Max had inexplicably led Sarah to the hospital's cardiac ward during one of their therapy sessions. Instead of visiting their usual patients, Max had sat firmly in front of the elevator until Sarah agreed to go up. There, they'd found Daniel, who'd just lost a young patient and was sitting alone in the chapel, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Max had approached him that day with the same gentle certainty he showed all those in pain, and in that moment, something beautiful began. Daniel, who'd always considered himself more of a cat person, found himself won over by Max's quiet wisdom and unfailing empathy. Their weekly hospital rounds became shared moments of joy, watching Max work his magic with patients while they fell deeper in love. But now, as Sarah prepared to walk down the aisle, Max's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He'd refused his favorite treat, the special organic dog biscuits Daniel always brought him, and kept returning to the stained glass window that depicted St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals. His whimpers grew more insistent, and he repeatedly tugged at Sarah's dress, trying to lead her toward the window. "Sarah, honey, we need to start," Eleanor urged, checking her diamond-studded watch. "The organist has already played the prelude twice." Jessica, always more attuned to Sarah's connection with Max, touched her sister's arm gently. "Something's wrong, isn't it? Max never acts like this without reason." Sarah knelt carefully in her dress, looking into Max's troubled eyes. "What is it, boy? What are you trying to tell me?" The dog pressed his forehead against hers, a gesture he often used with patients to calm them, but this time it felt different, urgent, almost pleading. The bridal suite door opened, and Father Michael stepped in, his kind face creased with concern. "Sarah, my dear, is everything." He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes fixed on Max. The dog immediately turned to the priest, letting out a soft whine that seemed to carry meaning beyond human understanding. Father Michael's expression shifted, a look of recognition crossing his weathered features. He crossed himself quietly, then stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. "Sarah," he said softly, "I believe we need to talk before you walk down that aisle. There's something you need to know, something I've been struggling with since last night's confession." Eleanor stepped forward, her voice sharp with anxiety. "Father, surely this can wait. We have 200 guests." "No," Father Michael interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "I don't believe it can. Max knows. Somehow he knows, and he's been trying to warn her." He turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with compassion. "My dear, what I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear, but Max, blessed creature that he has been trying to protect you from a truth that cannot wait until after the vows are spoken." Sarah felt her heart begin to race, the cathedral's bells continuing their solemn toll, each chime bringing her closer to a revelation that would shatter the perfect day she'd planned. But as she looked at Max, his eyes full of unwavering loyalty and love, she knew that whatever truth awaited her, she wasn't facing it alone. Some angels, after all, wore fur and soar with hearts unburdened by human blindness to truth. Father Michael gestured to a delicate antique settee near the stained glass window, the very window Max had been so fixated on. "Sit, my child. What I'm about to share begins with a confession I heard last night, and it ends with a decision only you can make. But first, you need to understand why Max has been trying so desperately to keep you from that altar." Father Michael's weathered hands clasped together as he settled into the ancient wooden chair beside Sarah. The morning light streaming through the stained glass window cast kaleidoscope patterns across his traditional vestments, while Max positioned himself protectively between them, his eyes never leaving the priest's face. The dog's unusual behavior now seemed to carry an almost supernatural weight in the hushed bridal suite. "Last night, during evening confession," Father Michael began, his voice barely above a whisper, "Daniel came to me. What he shared wasn't just a confession of past sins, but of current deceptions that run deeper than you could imagine." He paused, watching as Max gently placed his head in Sarah's lap, offering comfort for the blow that was about to come. Sarah's fingers instinctively wound into Max's golden fur, drawing strength from his steady presence. The same instinct that had led him to countless patients in need, that had helped him save a child during the hurricane, now seemed focused entirely on protecting her heart from what was to come. "Daniel," Father Michael continued, then stopped, struggling with his obligation to maintain the sanctity of confession while preventing a grave injustice. "I spent the night in prayer, seeking guidance on whether to break the seal of confession. This morning, during my prayers, I received a sign I cannot ignore." He gestured to Max. "Your faithful companion has been trying to tell you the same truth all morning. Some might call it coincidence, but I believe it's divine intervention, working through one of God's most pure creatures." Eleanor, who had been hovering nervously by the door, stepped forward. "Father, surely you're not suggesting we call off this wedding because of a dog's behavior?" "Not just behavior," Father Michael corrected gently. "Grace. Divine grace works in mysterious ways, and sometimes," he smiled slightly, "through mysterious messengers." The priest reached into his vestment pocket and withdrew a small, worn photograph. "This was brought to me last night, along with a confession that shook me to my core. Daniel isn't who you think he is, Sarah. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." Sarah's hand trembled as she took the photograph. It showed a woman in hospital scrubs, smiling broadly at the camera, her arm around a familiar figure, Daniel. The date stamp showed it was taken just 2 months ago. "Her name is Rebecca," Father Michael said softly. "She's a nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital in Chicago. She's also Daniel's wife." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Max pressed closer, his body warm and solid against her trembling form. "But that's impossible," Sarah whispered. "Daniel moved here from Boston. He's never worked in Chicago. She stopped, memories suddenly flooding back. The mysterious weekend conferences, the late-night phone calls he'd step outside to take, the way he'd always change the subject when asked about his past. "Rebecca found out about the wedding through a mutual colleague," Father Michael continued. "She came to Atlanta last week, seeking answers. That's when she discovered the truth. Daniel has been living a double life for years. He has a wife and young daughter in Chicago, where he works part-time at Mount Sinai. The position here at Atlanta General. It's real, but it's only part of his practice. He's been alternating weeks between 2 lives, 2 families, playing a deadly game of deception." Sarah's mind raced back to all the times Max had acted strangely around Daniel in recent weeks. The way he'd growl softly when Daniel would take those private phone calls. How he'd position himself between them during their last few therapy sessions at the hospital. Dogs, as Sarah knew from her veterinary work, could sense deception. They responded to subtle changes in body language, tone, and even the chemical changes that accompanied lying. "But why?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Why go to such elaborate lengths?" Father Michael's expression darkened. "Money, my dear. Both hospitals believe they have him exclusively. He's been drawing 2 full salaries, maintaining 2 separate lives. And, he hesitated. There's more. Rebecca discovered discrepancies in both hospitals' pharmaceutical inventories. Significant quantities of prescription medications have gone missing during his shifts. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Daniel wasn't just a liar. He was potentially involved in something far more sinister. All those times, he'd insisted on handling the medication logs during their shared hospital shifts, the odd hours he'd spend in the pharmacy. "Max knew," Sarah whispered, looking down at her faithful companion. "All those times he tried to lead me away from the pharmacy during our rounds, the way he'd become agitated when Daniel would handle the medication logs. He was trying to tell me something wasn't right." Jessica, who had remained quietly observant, spoke up. "Remember last month, when Max refused to let Daniel near that young patient in the cardiac ward? We thought he was just having an off day, but that patient had reported missing medications from her IV," Sarah finished, the pieces falling into place. "We assumed it was a documentation error, but—" She couldn't finish the thought. Father Michael nodded gravely. "Rebecca brought evidence to the hospital board in Chicago yesterday. They're launching an investigation, and the police are involved. Daniel doesn't know yet. He believes Rebecca is still in the dark about everything. That's what drove him to confession last night. Not genuine remorse, I fear, but rather a desperate attempt to clear his conscience before—" The priest paused. "Before he planned to disappear after the wedding, with access to your family's considerable assets." Sarah's mind flew to the joint account they'd opened last week, the paperwork they'd filed to add Daniel to her family's trust. Max had shredded the banking documents when they'd left them on the coffee table, something he'd never done before. At the time, they'd laughed it off as wedding jitters, affecting even their steady therapy dog. Now the truth of his actions hit her with stunning clarity. "What do we do?" Eleanor whispered, all thoughts of maintaining appearances forgotten in the face of this revelation. The guests, the media coverage, your father's business associates who flew in. "We tell the truth," Sarah said firmly, rising to her feet. Max stood with her, his posture straight and alert, as if a weight had been lifted now that his warnings had finally been understood. "We tell everyone exactly what happened here today, how a dog's love and a priest's courage saved me from making a terrible mistake." Father Michael smiled gently. "You know, there's an old belief that dogs can see angels, that they're more attuned to the spiritual world than we are. Looking at Max, seeing how desperately he's tried to protect you, I'm inclined to believe it." Sarah knelt beside Max, wrapping her arms around his sturdy frame. "You've saved so many people, sweet boy," she whispered into his fur. "All those therapy sessions, all those patients you've helped heal. But today you saved me. You saw what I couldn't see, knew what I didn't want to know." A commotion arose from the cathedral's main hall, raised voices, the sound of running feet. Jessica cracked open the door to see police officers entering the sanctuary, their presence causing a stir among the guests. Rebecca must have alerted them to Daniel's whereabouts. "God works in mysterious ways," Father Michael said, rising slowly. "Today, he chose to work through the pure heart of a dog who loves you enough to risk everything, your anger, your disbelief, even his place in your life, to protect you from harm." Sarah straightened her shoulders, smoothing her wedding dress. The cathedral doors would soon open, but not for a wedding march. Instead, she would walk out to face the gathered crowd with a different kind of truth, one about love, loyalty, and the mysterious ways God sends warnings through the most unexpected messengers. Max pressed against her leg, his presence steady and reassuring. In that moment, Sarah realized that, while she might not be getting her fairy tale wedding, she had something far more precious, a guardian angel in golden fur, who had proven that true love sometimes comes with 4 paws and the courage to bark out the truth, even when the whole world seems determined to silence it. Father Michael placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You know, my dear, there's an old saying that when God closes a door, He opens a window." He glanced down at Max, who was now sitting alertly by Sarah's side, ready to face whatever came next. Sometimes He even sends a special guardian to show us which window to climb through. The scene that unfolded in St. Augustine Cathedral would later be described by the local newspaper as a testament to divine intervention in a digital age. As Sarah emerged from the bridal suite, Max padding faithfully beside her, she faced not just her assembled guests, but a truth that would reshape countless lives beyond her own. Daniel, standing at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, didn't immediately register the gravity of the situation. His confident smile faltered. Only when he noticed the police officers positioning themselves at the cathedral's exits. It was Max who made the first move, breaking from Sarah's side to stand between Daniel and the altar steps, his stance protective but not aggressive, a guardian rather than an attacker. "Sarah, what's happening?" Daniel called out, his practiced charm cracking slightly at the edges. "Can someone control that dog?" Father Michael stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the vaulted space. "The dog is exactly where he needs to be, Daniel. Or should I say Dr. Harrison, or perhaps you prefer Dr. Matthews, as they know you in Chicago." The assembled guests began to murmur, a wave of whispers sweeping through the cathedral. Among them, Sarah now noticed several unfamiliar faces, serious men and women trying their best to blend in with the wedding crowd. Federal agents, she would later learn, who had been tracking Daniel's prescription drug scheme across state lines. But it was Rebecca's presence that finally shattered Daniel's composure. She stood at the back of the cathedral, their young daughter, Emily, clutching her hand, both still wearing their traveling clothes from the flight from Chicago. Max's ears perked up at Emily's quiet sob, his inherent desire to comfort warring with his protective duty. "You don't understand," Daniel began, taking a step backward. "I can explain everything." "Save it for your arraignment," one of the federal agents called out, moving forward. "We have all the evidence we need, including your confession to the hospital board in Chicago." What happened next would be talked about in Atlanta's medical community for years to come. As Daniel made a desperate break for the cathedral's side door, Max moved with the fluid grace that had made him such an exceptional therapy dog. Not to attack, but to herd, guiding Daniel straight into the waiting arms of law enforcement. Sarah found her voice, addressing the stunned assembly. "I owe everyone here an explanation, but first I owe an apology to someone who never lost faith in the truth." She knelt beside Max, who had returned to her side. "When Max became a therapy dog, the trainers told me he had an extraordinary gift for emotional intelligence. What they couldn't have known was that this gift would one day save not just my future, but potentially the lives of countless patients." Rebecca stepped forward, Emily still clutching her hand. When I discovered what Daniel was doing, the fake identities, the missing medications, the stolen prescriptions, I thought no one would believe me. How could someone so respected, so seemingly perfect, be capable of such deception? She smiled, tearfully at Max. I never expected a dog would be the one to expose the truth. As the police led Daniel away, Sarah noticed something remarkable. Max had moved to Emily's side, letting the frightened child bury her face in his fur, offering the same comfort he'd given to countless hospital patients. In that moment, Sarah understood that today's events weren't just about stopping a wedding or exposing a criminal. They were about healing in all its forms. Father Michael addressed the congregation, his voice gentle but firm. Many of you came here today expecting to witness a celebration of love. Instead, you've witnessed something far more profound, a demonstration of how truth, no matter how deeply buried, finds its way to the light, sometimes through the most unexpected messengers. In the days that followed, as Daniel's case made headlines and investigations revealed the full scope of his crimes, Sarah found herself drawn back to her work at the hospital with renewed purpose. Max's actions had not only saved her from a disastrous marriage, but had also exposed a dangerous prescription drug operation that had put countless patients at risk. The story took an unexpected turn when Rebecca, who had remained in Atlanta to testify against Daniel, brought Emily to visit Sarah at the hospital. The little girl, still processing the trauma of her father's arrest, found unexpected healing in spending time with Max during his therapy rounds. He knows exactly what each person needs, Emily observed, watching Max gently nuzzle a recovering stroke patient, even when they don't know it themselves. Sarah smiled, remembering all the times Max had tried to warn her about Daniel. Sometimes the purest hearts see what we can't or won't see ourselves. The incident sparked a revolution in the hospital's security protocols. Sarah, drawing from her experience, worked with the administration to implement a new program, incorporating therapy dogs in monitoring patient care and hospital security. Max became the flagship example of how animals' natural intuition could serve as an additional layer of protection for vulnerable patients. Dogs don't see status or titles, Sarah explained to a panel of hospital administrators. They see intentions, emotions, and truth. Max didn't care that Daniel was a respected surgeon. He sensed something was wrong, and he persisted until someone finally paid attention. Father Michael, who'd become a regular visitor to the hospital's new therapy dog program, often reflected on that fateful wedding day. In medieval times, people believed that dogs could see spirits, both good and evil. Modern science might scoff at such notions, but after what we witnessed, who are we to say what limits God puts on his creatures' abilities to perceive truth? The media attention brought unexpected opportunities. Sarah and Max were invited to speak at medical conferences about the innovative ways therapy dogs could be integrated into hospital security and patient care. Their story inspired other institutions to reevaluate their approaches to both patient safety and animal-assisted therapy. Rebecca, who had initially feared her career might be tainted by association with Daniel's crimes, found a new position at Atlanta General, where she and Sarah worked together to strengthen the hospital's medication monitoring systems. Emily, still healing from her father's betrayal, became a regular volunteer in the therapy dog program, finding her own path to healing by helping others. 1 year after the wedding that never was, Sarah stood in the hospital chapel with Max by her side. The same stained glass window that had captured Max's attention on that fateful morning now cast colourful shadows across the simple altar where Father Michael led a special blessing ceremony for the hospital's expanded therapy dog program. Looking back, Sarah addressed the gathered hospital staff and supporters. What seemed like the worst day of my life became a catalyst for change that has helped countless others. Max didn't just save me from a disastrous marriage. He showed us all the extraordinary power of trusting our instincts and standing firm in the face of deception. Max, his muzzle now slightly greyer but his eyes as bright as ever, sat proudly beside her, occasionally glancing at the chapel door, where new therapy dogs and their handlers waited to be blessed. Each had been carefully selected and trained, inspired by Max's example of how a dog's intuition could serve as a powerful force for good. Some might call it coincidence, Father Michael said during the blessing, that a dog's barking exposed a complex web of deception. Others might call it divine intervention. I prefer to think of it as a reminder that God's grace flows through all his creatures, especially those pure hearts who serve others without asking for recognition or reward. Emily, now helping to train new therapy dogs alongside Sarah, had perhaps the simplest explanation. Max taught us that love, real love, always tells the truth, even when it has to bark to be heard. The story of the wedding that never was became more than just a sensational headline. It evolved into a powerful testament to the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals, and how sometimes the purest form of love is the one that has the courage to stop us from making a terrible mistake. As Sarah watched the new therapy dogs receive their blessings, Max leaning contentedly against her leg, she realized that sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as its greatest disappointments. Her failed wedding had opened the door to a deeper purpose, one that combined her love of animals, her commitment to healing, and her newfound appreciation for the mysterious ways that truth finds its way into the light. Every dog has its day, Father Michael liked to say, smiling at Max during his hospital visits. But some dogs, some very special dogs, create new days for others, days that might never have dawned if they hadn't had the courage to bark out the truth. The investigation into Daniel's activities unveiled a deeper network of corruption that stretched far beyond Atlanta General and Mount Sinai. As federal agents pieced together the evidence, they discovered a sophisticated prescription drug ring, operating through multiple hospitals across 5 states. What had begun with Max's intuitive warning at a wedding was now dismantling one of the largest medical fraud operations in recent history. Sarah found herself at the center of a movement she never expected to lead. The local news coverage of Max's intervention had caught the attention of Dr. Sophia Chen, a prominent researcher in animal-assisted therapy at Johns Hopkins. Dr. Chen arrived in Atlanta on a humid Tuesday morning, intent on understanding how a therapy dog had detected what countless human systems had missed. Your experience with Max could revolutionize how we think about hospital security, Dr. Chen explained, watching Max work with patients in the cardiac ward. We've long known that dogs can detect physical ailments, cancers, seizures, blood, sugar changes, but what Max did goes beyond that. He sensed moral corruption, deception that put patients at risk. The study Dr. Chen proposed would combine Sarah's veterinary expertise with cutting-edge research in animal behavior and hospital security. Max would become the prototype for a new kind of therapy dog training, one that incorporated security awareness alongside emotional support. Rebecca, who had found her voice as an advocate for patient safety, collaborated with Sarah to document every instance where Max had shown awareness of Daniel's deceptions. It wasn't just the medication logs, she realized, reviewing security. Footage from the months before the wedding. Max would position himself between Daniel and vulnerable patients. He was protecting them even before we knew they needed protection. Emily, still processing her father's betrayal, found unexpected healing through her involvement in the research. Her natural ability to connect with the therapy dogs made her an invaluable part of the training program. "Dogs don't lie," she would tell new handlers during orientation. "They don't care about status or reputation. They care about what's real." The breakthrough came 3 months into Dr. Chen's study. During a routine therapy session, one of the new dogs in the program, a rescued border collie named Hope, began exhibiting the same alerting behavior Max had shown around Daniel. The dog's handler, following the protocols developed from Max's example, reported the behavior to hospital security. The subsequent investigation revealed a nurse who had been diverting medications, not for profit like Daniel, but to feed her own addiction. Instead of arrest, the nurse was offered rehabilitation and support. She later became one of the program's strongest advocates, speaking openly about how a dog's intervention had saved not just her career, but her life. What makes this program revolutionary, Dr. Chen would later write in her groundbreaking paper, is its emphasis on redemption over punishment. These dogs aren't just detecting wrongdoing, they're identifying humans in crisis, people who need help before their actions harm themselves or others. Father Michael, who had become the program's unofficial spiritual advisor, saw a deeper meaning in these developments. "In the Garden of Eden," he mused during one of his regular visits, "humans lost their ability to see truth clearly when they fell from grace. Perhaps God, in his wisdom, left us these four-legged angels to help us find our way back." The program's success attracted attention from unexpected quarters. A delegation from the Vatican's healthcare ministry visited Atlanta General, interested in implementing similar programs in Catholic hospitals worldwide. They were particularly moved by Max's story, seeing in it echoes of ancient tales about animals serving as divine messengers. Sarah found herself traveling internationally, speaking at medical conferences and animal behavior symposiums. Max, ever the professional, adapted seamlessly to hotel rooms and foreign airports, maintaining his calm demeanor whether working with patients in London's Royal Free Hospital or demonstrating his skills at the World Health Organization's headquarters in Geneva. But it was in the small, everyday moments that the true impact of their work became most apparent. Like the afternoon when a newly trained therapy dog named Luna refused to enter a patient's room, leading staff to discover a potentially fatal medication error. Or the morning when Max gently but firmly guided a disoriented elderly patient away from a dangerous stairwell, preventing what could have been a tragic fall. Emily, who had begun interning at the hospital's therapy dog training center, developed a special bond with a 3-legged German shepherd named Trinity. The dog, rescued from an abusive situation, showed an extraordinary ability to connect with children struggling to cope with family trauma. Trinity knows what it's like to be hurt by someone who should have cared for you, Emily explained to a young patient. But she also knows that healing is possible when you find people and animals who love you for exactly who you are. The program's success led to an unexpected partnership with the FBI's healthcare fraud division. Special Agent Marcus Rodriguez, initially skeptical of four-legged security guards, became a convert after witnessing Mac's alert to a sophisticated drug theft operation that human investigators had missed for months. These dogs aren't just detecting specific substances, Rodriguez noted in his report. They're reading complex patterns of human behavior that our traditional security measures often miss. They're picking up on stress, deception, and inconsistencies that even trained investigators might overlook. Sarah's work caught the attention of Dr. Miranda Foster, a pioneering researcher in the field of animal cognition at Oxford University. Dr. Foster's studies had focused on the evolutionary development of dogs' ability to read human emotions and intentions. What's fascinating about Max's case, Dr. Foster observed during a visit to Atlanta General, is how he combined his therapy dog training with an innate protective instinct. He didn't just sense deception. He acted on that knowledge in a way that protected both individuals and the larger community. The program's impact extended beyond hospital walls. Local law enforcement began consulting with Sarah and her team on cases involving medical fraud and drug diversion. The therapy dog's ability to detect deception proved valuable in investigations where traditional methods had reached dead ends. Rebecca, who had initially moved to Atlanta to testify against Daniel, found herself building a new life centered around the program's mission. She developed a support group for families affected by medical fraud, using her own experience to help others heal from betrayal and deception. What Max showed us, she would tell group members, is that truth has a way of coming to light, even when humans have built elaborate systems to hide it. Sometimes it just takes a different kind of wisdom, a purer kind of heart, to show us what we need to see. The story's reach expanded further when a documentary filmmaker approached Sarah about capturing the program's work. The resulting film, Guardian Angels, The Dogs Who See Truth, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, bringing the message of animal wisdom and healing to an even wider audience. 1 year into the program, Atlanta General had trained over 50 therapy dogs in the enhanced protocol developed from Max's example. Each dog brought its own unique gifts to the work, like Bear, a gentle Newfoundland who specialized in pediatric cases, or Nova, a quick-thinking Australian shepherd who excelled at detecting medication errors. But perhaps the most profound impact came in the quiet moments between crises, in the daily interactions between dogs and humans that rebuilt trust in a system shaken by betrayal. As Sarah watched Max work with a group of medical students, teaching them to read the subtle signs of animal communication, she realized that his greatest gift hadn't been exposing a single criminal. It had been showing humans how to see truth more clearly themselves. In the end, Sarah reflected during a TEDx talk that would later go viral, Max didn't just save me from a fraudulent marriage. He showed us all that wisdom comes in many forms, and that sometimes the purest hearts are the ones covered in fur. The ripple effects of Max's intervention at St. Augustine Cathedral continue to spread in unexpected ways. As Daniel's case moved through the federal court system, a different kind of transformation was taking place in hospitals and healthcare facilities across the country. The integration of therapy dogs into security protocols had sparked a revolution in patient care that no one could have predicted. Sarah's phone rang early one morning, 18 months after the wedding that never was. On the line was Dr. Amelia Winters, Chief of Medicine at Mayo Clinic. "We've been following your work," she said, her voice carrying a mix of professional interest and personal wonder. "What you've developed here, it's changing everything we thought we knew about institutional safety and healing." The Mayo Clinic had become the first major medical institution to fully adopt what was now known as the MAX protocol, a comprehensive system that combined therapy dogs' natural intuition with advanced security measures. The results were extraordinary. In the first 6 months alone, they had prevented 3 major medication theft attempts and identified numerous patients in crisis who might otherwise have gone unnoticed. Meanwhile, Emily had begun writing a children's book series inspired by her experiences with the therapy dog program. The first book, Max the Truth Teller, told the story of her father's deception from a unique perspective, that of a dog who could see what others couldn't. The series quickly became a tool for counselors working with children affected by family trauma. "Dogs show us that love and truth are inseparable," Emily explained during a reading at the hospital's pediatric ward. "Max didn't just expose my dad's lies, he showed us all how to rebuild trust after it's been broken." The program's success attracted attention from unexpected quarters. The United Nations World Health Organization invited Sarah to speak at a global conference on healthcare security. Standing before representatives from 193 countries, Sarah shared how a wedding day crisis had evolved into a worldwide movement. "What we've learned," she told the assembled delegates, "is that security isn't just about technology and protocols. It's about understanding that wisdom can come from unexpected sources, and that sometimes the purest hearts are the best judges of character." The conference led to the establishment of the International Association for Animal-Assisted Healthcare Security, IAHS, with Sarah serving as its inaugural director. The organization brought together veterinarians, security experts, and healthcare professionals from around the world, all united by the belief that animals could play a crucial role in protecting vulnerable patients. Back in Atlanta, Max's influence continued to grow in profound ways. The therapy dog program had expanded to include specialized teams for different healthcare settings. In the psychiatric ward, a gentle Great Dane named Soul helped patients find the courage to share their struggles. In the pediatric oncology unit, a pair of rescued Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, Hope and Faith, brought comfort to children fighting cancer. Rebecca, who had transformed her experience with betrayal into a force for positive change, developed a groundbreaking support program for healthcare workers struggling with addiction. The program, called Second Chances, incorporated therapy dogs into the recovery process, helping medical professionals find their way back to healing work. "What Max showed us that day in the cathedral," Rebecca often said, "wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing. It was about understanding that even good people can lose their way, and that true healing requires both accountability and compassion." The program gained unexpected validation when a major insurance company conducted a study of hospitals using the MAX protocol. The results were stunning. Facilities with integrated therapy dog security programs showed significantly lower rates of medication theft, patient abuse, and staff misconduct. More importantly, they reported higher levels of patient satisfaction and staff morale. Father Michael, whose initial blessing of Max's intervention had helped set everything in motion, found himself increasingly called upon to speak about the spiritual dimensions of animal-assisted healing. In ancient times, he would tell visitors to the hospital's newly established chapel of all creatures, people believed that animals could see angels. Perhaps what they were really sensing was the presence of divine truth in our midst. The chapel itself had become a unique space in modern healthcare, a place where patients, staff, and therapy dogs could find moments of quiet connection. The stained glass window that had so captivated Max on that fateful wedding day had inspired a new installation. A series of windows depicting therapy dogs throughout history, from St. Bernard rescue dogs to modern service animals. Sarah's personal life had taken an unexpected turn as well. Through her work with the IAEH, she met Dr. James Chen, a veterinary neurologist who shared her passion for understanding the deeper capabilities of therapy animals. Their collaboration on research into canine intuition gradually evolved into something more personal. Max approved of him right away, Sarah confided to Rebecca during one of their regular coffee meetings. No barking required this time. The hospital's therapy dog training center, now housed in a state-of-the-art facility funded by a healthcare security grant, had become a model for programs worldwide. Emily, who had found her calling working with young therapy dogs, developed a specialized curriculum for training dogs to work with traumatized children. These dogs don't just sense physical danger, Emily explained to a group of international observers. They understand emotional wounds, the kind that don't show up on any medical scan. They know when a heart is hurting, when a soul needs healing. The program's impact extended into the legal system as well. Max's role in exposing Daniel's crimes had led to a groundbreaking legal precedent. In several states, therapy dogs' alerts were now considered probable cause for investigating potential healthcare fraud, provided they were trained and certified under the Max Protocol. The documentary about the program had evolved into a popular series, each episode focusing on a different aspect of therapy dogs' work in healthcare settings. The episode featuring Trinity, the three-legged German shepherd who worked with trauma. Survivors won an Emmy for its powerful portrayal of healing and resilience. 2 years after the wedding that never was, Sarah stood in the hospital's new training center, watching Max work with a group of young therapy dogs. Though his muzzle had whitened and his pace had slowed, his wisdom and gentle spirit continued to shape the next generation of four-legged guardians. The real miracle, Sarah told a journalist who was profiling the program, isn't just that Max stopped a wedding or exposed a crime. It's that he showed us a new way of thinking about healing, truth, and the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals. The training center's walls were lined with photographs. Max with patients he'd helped, therapy dogs who'd followed in his paw prints, lives transformed by the simple, profound truth that sometimes the purest wisdom comes from hearts that never learned to lie. Emily, now a confident young woman leading her own therapy dog team, often reflected on how a moment of crisis had become a catalyst for worldwide change. My father's actions could have destroyed my faith in everything, she shared during a TED Talk that would later go viral. Instead, thanks to Max, I learned that truth always finds its way into the light, and that sometimes our greatest teachers come with wagging tails and loving hearts. As Sarah watched a new group of therapy dogs and handlers graduate from the program, Max dozing contentedly at her feet, she realized that their story had become something far greater than a prevented wedding or an exposed crime. It had become a testament to the extraordinary ways that love, truth, and healing could flow through the most unexpected channels, transforming not just individual lives, but entire systems of care and protection. "Every dog has its day," Father Michael had said at that first blessing ceremony. Looking at the worldwide movement that had grown from Max's simple act of truth-telling, Sarah knew that some dogs' days never really ended. They just kept expanding, touching more lives, healing more hearts, and showing us all that sometimes the purest wisdom comes from those who love us enough to bark out the truth, even when the whole world seems determined to celebrate a lie. 3 years after the wedding that never was, the Max Protocol had evolved into something far more profound than anyone could have imagined. The program's success caught the attention of Dr. Rajesh Patel, a pioneering researcher in artificial intelligence at MIT, who saw something revolutionary in the way therapy dogs processed complex social and emotional information. "What fascinates me," Dr. Patel explained during a groundbreaking collaborative study, is how these dogs integrate multiple layers of sensory and emotional data in ways our most advanced AI systems can't begin to match. They're not just detecting lies, they're understanding the complex web of human relationships and intentions. The study combined advanced neuroimaging with behavioral observation, seeking to understand how dogs like Max processed information about human trustworthiness. The results challenged everything scientists thought they knew about canine cognition and emotional intelligence. Meanwhile, Sarah had been invited to establish a pilot program at Doctors Without Borders, integrating therapy dogs into crisis response teams. The first deployment came after a devastating earthquake in Nepal, where therapy dogs trained under the Max Protocol helped identify survivors trapped in collapsed buildings and provided emotional support to traumatized communities. "These dogs are doing more than just search and rescue," reported Dr. Maria Santos, head of the crisis response team. "They're helping us rebuild trust in communities where the medical infrastructure has been completely destroyed. People who are afraid to seek help, who've lost faith in institutions, find something in these dogs that helps them begin to trust again." Emily, now studying veterinary medicine while continuing her work with the therapy dog program, made a discovery that would add another dimension to their understanding of canine intuition. Working with Trinity, the 3-legged German shepherd, she noticed patterns in how the dog responded to patients with hidden trauma. Trinity doesn't just detect current distress, Emily documented in her research journal. She seems to understand patterns of past trauma, responding differently to patients based on their individual histories of trust and betrayal. It's as if she's reading not just their present state, but their entire emotional journey. The implications of Emily's observations led to a new branch of trauma-informed therapy that integrated animal intuition with traditional psychological approaches. The results were particularly powerful in treating children who had experienced medical trauma or betrayal by caregivers. Rebecca, whose work with healthcare professionals in recovery had gained international recognition, partnered with the Betty Ford Center to develop a specialized program for medical professionals struggling with addiction. The program, which integrated therapy dogs into every phase of recovery, showed unprecedented success rates. What these dogs offer, Rebecca explained at a conference on healthcare ethics, is something unique in addiction recovery: unconditional presence without judgment, combined with an unfailing instinct for truth. They help our participants find their way back to their original calling as healers. The program's success in healthcare settings led to unexpected applications in other fields. The Department of Justice launched a pilot program incorporating therapy dogs into courtroom settings, particularly in cases involving medical fraud or healthcare crimes. The dog's ability to sense deception and provide emotional support proved invaluable in helping vulnerable witnesses testify. Father Michael, whose spiritual guidance had been instrumental in the program's early days, worked with religious leaders from various faiths to explore the deeper implications of animal wisdom in human healing. The resulting interfaith conference, Divine Messengers, Animal Wisdom in Human Healing, brought together spiritual leaders, scientists, and healthcare professionals from around the world. What we're witnessing, said Rabbi David Cohen during the conference's keynote address, isn't just about dogs detecting lies or providing comfort. It's about rediscovering an ancient truth: that sometimes the divine speaks to us through the pure hearts of our animal companions. The program's impact on healthcare security led to innovations in hospital design. Architects began incorporating features that supported the work of therapy dog teams: quiet spaces for animal-assisted therapy, specialized ventilation systems that helped dogs better detect chemical changes associated with deception, and dedicated areas for handler dog teams to rest and recharge. Sarah's work with Dr. James Chen had evolved into both a personal and professional partnership. Their research into the neurological basis of canine intuition led to breakthrough discoveries about how dogs processed complex social information. Their wedding, held in the hospital's chapel of all creatures, was attended by both human guests and a honor guard of therapy dogs, with Max serving as the ring bearer. This time, Sarah laughed during the ceremony. The only barking was celebratory. The international impact of the Max Protocol continued to grow in unexpected ways. In regions where traditional healthcare systems had broken down due to corruption or conflict, therapy dog teams helped rebuild trust between medical providers and traumatized communities. The dog's ability to detect deception while providing emotional support proved invaluable in settings where trust had been shattered. Emily's children's book series had expanded to include stories about different therapy dogs in the program, each addressing different aspects of healing and trust. The Trinity Tales, featuring the three-legged German Shepherd, became particularly popular among child psychologists working with young trauma survivors. These stories give children a way to talk about difficult experiences, explained Dr. Lisa Wong, head of pediatric psychology at Boston Children's Hospital. They show that physical or emotional wounds don't define you, and that sometimes our greatest challenges can become our greatest gifts to others. The program's success led to the establishment of the Global Institute for Animal-Assisted Healthcare Security, a research and training facility that brought together experts from multiple disciplines. The Institute's work expanded beyond healthcare settings to explore how animal intuition could help address challenges in various institutional settings. Max, now in his senior years but still actively involved in training young therapy dogs, had become something of a legend in the field. His story had inspired a new generation of handlers and dogs, each bringing their own unique gifts to the work of healing and protection. What Max taught us, Sarah reflected during the Institute's opening ceremony, goes beyond detecting deception or preventing crime. He showed us that true security isn't just about systems and protocols. It's about creating environments where truth can flourish and healing can happen. The program's impact extended into popular culture as well. A major film studio optioned the rights to Max's story, with the stipulation that part of the proceeds would go to supporting therapy dog programs in underserved communities. The resulting film, The Truth in Their Eyes, became a touching tribute to the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals. As the program entered its fourth year, its influence could be seen in countless ways, both large and small. Hospitals reported improved patient outcomes and staff morale. Security breaches in facilities using the Max protocol dropped significantly. Most importantly, the presence of therapy dogs helped create environments where healing could happen on multiple levels. Father Michael, observing a therapy dog session with young patients in the pediatric ward, summed up the program's deeper impact. In an age of increasing technological sophistication, these dogs remind us of something profoundly simple, that truth, love, and healing are interconnected, and that sometimes the purest wisdom comes from hearts that have never learned to deceive. The legacy of that fateful wedding day continued to evolve, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. What had begun as a dog's desperate attempt to protect his beloved human had grown into a worldwide movement that was transforming how institutions approached healing, security, and trust. Every crisis contains a gift, Sarah often told new handlers in the program. Max's gift to us wasn't just stopping a wedding or exposing a crime. It was showing us that when we trust the wisdom of pure hearts, whether they beat in human chests or beneath fur coats, we open ourselves to deeper truths and more profound healing than we ever imagined possible. The fourth anniversary of what became known as the Cathedral Revelation brought an unexpected breakthrough in the scientific understanding of canine intuition. Dr. James Chen and Sarah's collaborative research at the Global Institute for Animal-Assisted Healthcare Security uncovered something remarkable in the brain patterns of therapy dogs trained under the Max protocol. Using advanced neuroimaging techniques, they discovered unique neural pathways that activated when therapy dogs encountered deceptive behavior. These pathways showed surprising similarities to the mirror neuron systems in human brains, regions associated with empathy and social understanding. What we're seeing, Dr. Chen explained during a presentation at the World Science Forum in Singapore, suggests that these dogs aren't just reading body language or detecting chemical changes. They're processing complex social and emotional information in ways that parallel and sometimes exceed human cognitive capabilities. The discovery led to a groundbreaking collaboration with CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. Dr. Eleanor, a quantum physicist with an interest in consciousness studies, proposed a radical theory that therapy dogs might be detecting quantum-level changes in human consciousness during moments of deception. The implications are staggering, Dr. Kovacs explained. These dogs may be perceiving reality at a fundamental level we're only beginning to understand. Their ability to detect truth and deception might be linked to quantum entanglement patterns in consciousness itself. Meanwhile, the humanitarian applications of the Max Protocol continued to expand in unexpected directions. In conflict zones where medical neutrality had been compromised, therapy dog teams helped restore trust in healthcare services. The United Nations peacekeeping forces began incorporating these teams into their medical units, with remarkable results. Dr. Ahmed Hassan, coordinating medical relief efforts in a war-torn region of Sudan, reported an extraordinary incident. A therapy dog named Peace, trained under the Max Protocol, helped expose a group posing as medical workers who were actually gathering intelligence for a militant faction. The dog's reaction saved countless lives, Dr. Hassan reported, but more importantly, it helped preserve the neutrality of medical services in the region. When people saw how the dog protected them from those who would abuse their trust, it restored their faith in humanitarian aid. Emily's work with trauma survivors led to another significant breakthrough. Working with neuroplasticity experts, she discovered that interaction with therapy dogs could help rebuild neural pathways damaged by trauma, particularly in children who had experienced medical abuse or betrayal. What we're seeing is more than just emotional comfort, Emily explained at a pediatric trauma conference. These dogs are actually helping rewire traumatized brains, creating new patterns of trust and healing. The implications of this discovery revolutionized trauma therapy. Hospitals began incorporating dedicated healing spaces where patients could work with therapy dogs as part of their recovery process. The results were particularly dramatic in cases of complex medical trauma. Rebecca's work with healthcare professionals in recovery expanded to address a growing crisis in medical ethics. The pressures of modern healthcare had led to increasing rates of burnout and moral injury among medical staff. The therapy dog program offered a unique solution. These dogs don't just help us detect problems, Rebecca explained to a group of hospital administrators. They remind us of our original calling as healers. They help us reconnect with the pure intention to help others that brought us into medicine in the first place. The program's success caught the attention of the Gates Foundation, which provided funding for a global initiative to integrate therapy dog teams into healthcare systems in developing nations. The Foundation's report highlighted an unexpected benefit. Regions with active therapy dog programs showed significantly lower rates of medical corruption and drug diversion. Father Michael's interfaith work led to the establishment of the Healing Heart Sanctuary, a unique space where spiritual counseling and animal-assisted therapy combined to address deeper questions of ethics and healing. The sanctuary became a model for similar programs worldwide. What these dogs offer, Father Michael observed, is something beyond our human understanding of morality. They connect us to a more fundamental truth, that healing requires both compassion and honesty, mercy and justice. The scientific implications of the Max Protocol extended into unexpected areas. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, expressed interest in studying how therapy dogs processed information about human intentions. However, Sarah and Dr. Chen were careful to ensure the research remained focused on healing rather than surveillance. These dogs are healers, not weapons, Sarah insisted during a congressional hearing on medical security. Their gift is helping us create environments of trust and safety, not detecting threats. Max, now in his twilight years, but still actively involved in training young dogs, continued to demonstrate new aspects of canine wisdom. His work with end-of-life patients revealed an extraordinary ability to sense when someone was ready to discuss difficult truths they had been avoiding. "He knows," observed Dr. Margaret Wu, head of palliative care at Atlanta General. "He knows when a patient needs to share a final truth, make peace with family, or simply have someone present as they face their fears. It's beyond anything we can quantify or measure." The program's impact on medical education led to the establishment of the Max Institute for Medical Ethics, where future healthcare providers learn to integrate insights from animal-assisted therapy into their practice. The Institute's motto, "Truth Heals," reflected its commitment to combining technical excellence with emotional intelligence. Emily's research into trauma healing produced another surprising discovery. Working with children who had experienced medical trauma, she noticed that therapy dogs showed different responses to patients based on their stage of healing, not just their current emotional state. "These dogs somehow understand the journey of healing," Emily noted in her research. "They adjust their approach based on where each person is in their recovery process, offering exactly what's needed at each stage." The Global Institute's work expanded to include research into other species with potential therapeutic applications. While dogs remained the primary focus, studies began examining how other animals, from horses to dolphins, might contribute to creating environments of trust and healing. Sarah and Dr. Chen's personal life reflected the transformative power of their work. Their first child, born in the hospital where the Max protocol began, was immediately adopted into the extended family of therapy dogs and handlers. Max, though slowing down, took on the role of guardian with his characteristic wisdom and grace. "Watching Max with our daughter," Sarah shared during a TED Talk that would later go viral, "I see the same pure intention that saved me from making a terrible mistake years ago. These dogs don't just detect truth, they embody it. They show us what it means to live with complete authenticity and unconditional love." The program's influence continued to ripple outward in unexpected ways. A major technology company developed an AI system inspired by the way therapy dogs processed social information. While the AI couldn't replicate the dog's intuitive abilities, it led to improvements in healthcare security systems that complemented the work of therapy dog teams. As the sun set on another day at the Global Institute, Sarah watched Max dozing in a patch of sunlight, surrounded by young therapy dogs in training. His muzzle was now completely white, but his eyes still held the same wisdom that had changed countless lives. Some might say it was just luck or coincidence that Max barked. That day in the cathedral, Father Michael reflected during a quiet moment. But I believe it was something more, a reminder that truth and love are not abstract concepts but living forces in our world, and sometimes they come to us on four legs, wearing fur coats and carrying wisdom in their hearts. The 5th year of the Max Protocol brought an unprecedented challenge that would test everything they had learned about the healing power of canine intuition. A global health crisis had forced medical facilities worldwide to adapt to new protocols, and many questioned whether therapy dog programs could continue to function effectively under such stringent conditions. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a pioneering researcher in biomedical engineering at Tokyo University, proposed a revolutionary solution. Working with Sarah and Dr. Chen, she developed a system that allowed therapy dogs to interact with patients through specially designed barrier systems that maintained safety while preserving the dog's ability to detect emotional and physical distress. What we discovered, Dr. Tanaka explained during a virtual medical conference, was that these dogs' ability to sense truth and deception actually increased when other sensory inputs were filtered. It's as if removing some environmental noise allowed them to focus more intensely on the subtle signals humans emit during moments of crisis or deception. The crisis also led to an unexpected breakthrough in understanding how therapy dogs processed information. When forced to interact through barriers, the dogs developed new ways of communicating their insights to handlers. These adaptations revealed previously unknown aspects of canine-human communication. Emily, whose work with trauma survivors had expanded to include virtual therapy sessions, made a startling discovery. The therapy dogs could detect emotional distress and deception even through video calls, responding to subtle changes in voice, patterns and digital body language that humans might miss. These dogs are teaching us about forms of communication we never knew existed, Emily reported in a groundbreaking paper. They're showing us that truth and deception leave traces in ways we're only beginning to understand. The Global Institute's research took an unexpected turn when they began collaborating with NASA's Space Medicine Division. The space agency was interested in how therapy dogs might help maintain psychological health during long-term space missions, particularly in detecting early signs of psychological stress that could compromise crew safety. The implications for space exploration are enormous, explained Dr. Sarah Rodriguez, NASA's Chief of Psychological Health. If we can understand how these dogs process information about human truthfulness and emotional states, we might be able to develop better systems for monitoring crew health during deep space missions. Meanwhile, Max's legacy continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Though he had retired from active service, his presence at the Global Institute remained profound. Young dogs in training would often seek him out, as if drawing wisdom from his years of experience. Handlers noticed that dogs who spent time with Max seemed to develop their intuitive abilities more quickly. "It's almost as if he's teaching them," observed Dr. Chen during a research session. Not through traditional training methods, but through some form of direct transmission of understanding that we're only beginning to grasp. The program's impact on healthcare security led to an innovative partnership with international law enforcement agencies. Europol established a specialized unit that combined therapy dog teams with traditional investigative methods to combat pharmaceutical fraud and medical corruption. "These dogs bring something unique to investigations," explained Inspector Marie Dubois of Europol's Healthcare Fraud Division. "They don't just help us detect crime. They help us understand the human factors that lead to healthcare fraud in the first place." Rebecca's work with healthcare professionals in recovery expanded to address a growing crisis in medical ethics. The pressures of modern healthcare had led to increasing rates of burnout and moral injury among medical staff. The therapy dog program offered a unique solution that combined emotional support with ethical reinforcement. "What we're seeing," Rebecca explained during a medical ethics symposium, "is that interaction with these dogs helps healthcare workers reconnect with their original calling. The dog's pure intention to heal and protect reminds us of our own highest purpose." Father Michael's interfaith initiative evolved into a global movement, exploring the spiritual dimensions of animal-assisted healing. The Healing Heart Sanctuary model was adopted by religious institutions worldwide, creating spaces where spiritual counseling and animal wisdom could combine to address deeper questions of ethics and healing. These dogs are showing us something profound about the nature of truth itself, Father Michael observed during an interfaith conference. They remind us that truth isn't just factual accuracy. It's a living force that seeks to heal and protect. The scientific implications of the Max Protocol continued to expand. Dr. Eleanor Kovach's quantum consciousness research revealed patterns suggesting that therapy dogs might be detecting quantum-level changes in human brain states during moments of deception or emotional crisis. What we're observing, Dr. Kovach explained, challenges our understanding of consciousness itself. These dogs appear to be processing information at a level that transcends classical physics. Sarah and Dr. Jen's daughter, now a toddler, showed an extraordinary affinity for the therapy dogs. Her natural ability to understand and communicate with the dogs led to new insights about how children might be taught to develop similar intuitive capabilities. "She sees the world the way they do," Sarah noted during a research session. "Without preconceptions or learned biases, it's teaching us about the potential we all might have to perceive truth more clearly." The program's success in crisis zones led to an unexpected partnership with Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. Therapy dog teams became integral parts of emergency medical responses, helping to establish trust in communities where medical services had been compromised by conflict or corruption. "These dogs don't just help us detect threats," explained Dr. Sophie Lambert of MSF. "They help us rebuild trust in places where the very concept of medical care has been weaponized. They remind people that healing is still possible, that trust can be restored." Emily's research into trauma healing led to the development of new protocols for working with survivors of medical abuse. The therapy dogs showed an extraordinary ability to help patients distinguish between past trauma responses and present reality, facilitating deeper healing. "What we're learning," Emily explained during a trauma therapy conference, "is that these dogs don't just comfort trauma survivors, they help them recalibrate their trust responses. They show them that it's possible to be vigilant without being paralyzed by fear." The Global Institute's work caught the attention of the World Health Organization, which commissioned a comprehensive study of how therapy dog programs might be integrated into global healthcare security initiatives. The resulting report highlighted the cost-effectiveness of using therapy dogs to prevent healthcare fraud and protect vulnerable patients. As the program entered its 6th year, its influence could be seen in countless ways, both large and small. Hospitals reported improved patient outcomes and staff morale. Security breaches in facilities using the Max Protocol dropped significantly. Most importantly, the presence of therapy dogs helped create environments where healing could happen on multiple levels. What began with a dog barking at a wedding, Sarah reflected during the Global Institute's 5th anniversary celebration, has become a worldwide movement for truth and healing in healthcare. These dogs are showing us that the purest wisdom often comes from the simplest source, a heart that knows no deception, that seeks only to protect and heal. Max, though now in his final months, continued to demonstrate the depth of canine wisdom. His presence in the Institute's gardens became a source of peace for staff and visitors alike. Young dogs in training would often sit quietly beside him, as if absorbing the wisdom of his years of service. "Some might say it's just instinct or training," Father Michael observed, watching Max with a group of young therapy dogs. "But I believe we're witnessing something more profound. the transmission of a kind of wisdom that transcends our human understanding of truth and healing. As the Max Protocol entered its 6th year, a remarkable discovery emerged from an unexpected quarter. A young neuroscientist at Stanford, Dr. Maya Patel, had been studying the brain activity of children born to parents involved in the therapy dog program. What she found would reshape our understanding of human-animal connections. These children, Dr. Patel revealed during a groundbreaking presentation at the World Neuroscience Congress, show enhanced development in areas of the brain associated with emotional intelligence and truth detection. It's as if growing up around therapy dogs has activated dormant neural pathways, ones that might have been more active in our distant ancestors. The implications of Dr. Patel's research extended far beyond the medical field. Educational institutions worldwide began exploring how therapy dogs might help develop stronger ethical foundations in young minds. The Max's Cubs program, launched in elementary schools across 5 continents, showed promising results in helping children develop stronger emotional intelligence and ethical decision-making skills. Sarah and Dr. Chen's daughter, now approaching her 4th birthday, became a living testament to these findings. Her natural ability to communicate with therapy dogs had evolved into an extraordinary capacity for understanding human emotions and intentions. She could often sense when someone was hiding pain or struggling with a difficult truth, much like her canine companions. "She's teaching us about possibilities we never imagined," Sarah shared during a special session at the Global Institute. These children aren't just growing up with therapy dogs, they're developing new ways of perceiving and understanding the world around them. Meanwhile, the humanitarian applications of the Max Protocol continued to expand in groundbreaking ways. In regions torn apart by medical distrust and corruption, therapy dog teams became crucial bridges between healthcare providers and traumatized communities. The United Nations adopted the program as part of its peacekeeping medical units, with extraordinary results. Dr. Amina Omar, coordinating relief efforts in a conflict zone, reported a transformative incident. A therapy dog named Hope had detected that someone in a refugee camp medical clinic was tampering with vaccine supplies. The discovery not only prevented potential harm, but helped restore faith in vaccination programs that had been compromised by years of distrust. These dogs aren't just protecting medical supplies, Dr. Omar explained. They're helping rebuild trust in places where faith in healthcare has been shattered by years of corruption and abuse. Emily's work with trauma survivors led to another significant breakthrough. Working with veterans suffering from moral injury, the psychological wound of witnessing or participating in actions that violated their ethical beliefs, she discovered that therapy dogs could help bridge the gap between past trauma and present healing. These dogs don't judge past actions, Emily explained during a VA hospital conference. They respond to the present moment, to the genuine desire for healing and truth. They're helping veterans find their way back to themselves. The program's impact on medical education took an unexpected turn when the American Medical Association announced a revolutionary change to medical school curricula. Starting in 2026, all medical students would be required to complete training modules in animal-assisted ethics and intuitive healing. "We're not just training doctors to treat illnesses," explained Dr. James Morrison, chair of the AMA's Education Committee. We're helping them develop the kind of emotional intelligence and ethical awareness that these remarkable dogs have been demonstrating all along. Rebecca's work with healthcare professionals in recovery expanded to address a growing crisis in medical ethics. The pressures of modern healthcare had led to increasing rates of burnout and moral injury among medical staff. The Therapy Dog program offered a unique solution that combined emotional support with ethical reinforcement. What we're seeing, Rebecca explained during a medical ethics symposium, is that interaction with these dogs helps healthcare workers reconnect with their original calling. The dog's pure intention to heal and protect reminds us of our own highest purpose. Father Michael's interfaith initiative evolved into a global movement exploring the spiritual dimensions of animal-assisted healing. The Healing Hearts Sanctuary model was adopted by religious institutions worldwide, creating spaces where spiritual counseling and animal wisdom could combine to address deeper questions of ethics and healing. Max, though now in his final season of life, continued to demonstrate the depth of canine wisdom. His presence in the Institute's gardens became a source of peace for staff and visitors alike. Young dogs in training would often sit quietly beside him, as if absorbing the wisdom of his years of service. The scientific community's understanding of canine intuition took another leap forward when Dr. Eleanor Kovach's quantum consciousness research revealed patterns suggesting that therapy dogs might be detecting quantum-level changes in human brain states during moments of deception or emotional crisis. What we're observing, Dr. Kovach explained, challenges our understanding of consciousness itself. These dogs appear to be processing information at a level that transcends classical physics. The Global Institute's work caught the attention of major technology companies, leading to an innovative collaboration. A team of AI researchers began developing algorithms based on the way therapy dogs processed social and emotional information. While the AI couldn't replicate the dog's intuitive abilities, it led to significant improvements in healthcare security systems. "We're not trying to replace the dogs," explained Dr. Chen during a tech conference. "We're learning from them, understanding how they process information about human intentions and emotions. It's helping us create better tools to support their work." Sarah's personal journey came full circle when she was invited to speak at St. Augustine Cathedral, where Max's barking had first exposed the truth about Daniel. The cathedral had become a symbol of how truth could emerge from unexpected sources, and how love sometimes required the courage to bark out uncomfortable truths. "Standing here today," Sarah addressed the gathered congregation, "I'm reminded that wisdom often comes to us in forms we least expect. Sometimes it takes a dog's bark to wake us up to deeper truths about ourselves and our world." The program's success in crisis zones led to an unexpected partnership with Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. Therapy dog teams became integral parts of emergency medical responses, helping to establish trust in communities where medical services had been compromised by conflict or corruption. As Max's life drew closer to its natural conclusion, the Global Institute prepared to honor his legacy in a unique way. The Max Protocol would be enshrined in a new international standard for healthcare ethics and security, ensuring that the wisdom he had demonstrated would continue to protect and heal long after his time had passed. "Some might say it was just instinct or training," Father Michael observed, watching Max with a group of young therapy dogs. But I believe we're witnessing something more profound, the transmission of a kind of wisdom that transcends our human understanding of truth and healing. Sarah, watching her daughter play with the newest generation of therapy dogs, reflected on how a moment of crisis had transformed into a worldwide movement for truth and healing. "Max didn't just save me from a fraudulent marriage," she observed. "He showed us all that sometimes the purest wisdom comes from hearts that never learned to lie." As the sun set on another day at the Global Institute, Max dozed peacefully, in his favorite spot in the garden, surrounded by young dogs in training. His legacy would live on not just in protocols and programs, but in the countless lives touched by the simple truth he had demonstrated. That love sometimes requires the courage to bark out the truth, even when the whole world seems determined to celebrate a lie. On a crisp autumn morning, exactly 6 years after the wedding that never was, the Global Institute for Animal-Assisted Healthcare Security prepared for a moment none had wanted to face. Max, the dog whose bark had launched a worldwide movement, was entering his final days. His white muzzle and gentle eyes still carried the wisdom that had changed countless lives. But his body was finally yielding to the passage of time. Dr. Eleanor had rushed from CERN to conduct one final study, bringing with her the most advanced quantum consciousness monitoring equipment ever developed. What she discovered in Max's final days would reshape our understanding of the connection between animals and humans forever. The quantum coherence patterns we're detecting in Max's brain are unlike anything we've ever seen, Dr. Kovac reported, her voice filled with wonder. It's as if his consciousness is operating on multiple levels simultaneously, perceiving reality in ways our instruments can barely detect. Sarah, now heading the Global Institute while raising her daughter alongside Dr. Chen, had arranged for Max's last days to be spent in the Institute's healing garden. The space had become a sanctuary where therapy dogs in training could absorb the wisdom of their pioneering predecessor, and where patients could find peace in the presence of these extraordinary animals. A remarkable phenomenon began to unfold. Therapy dogs from across the globe, as if sensing the significance of the moment, began arriving with their handlers at the Institute. Dogs that had never met Max would sit quietly near him, their presence creating what Dr. Kovac's instruments detected as a complex web of quantum entanglement. "It's as if they're receiving a final transmission," Dr. Chen observed, watching a young therapy dog named Spirit gently press his forehead against Max's. "They're carrying forward not just his training, but his fundamental understanding of truth and healing." Emily, whose work with trauma survivors had evolved into a groundbreaking approach to healing intergenerational trauma, documented an extraordinary series of interactions. Children who had been part of the Max's Cubs program showed an intuitive understanding of what was happening, often explaining it to their parents in ways that bridged the gap between human logic and animal wisdom. "He's teaching them how to see with their hearts," one young participant explained, watching Max with the new therapy dogs, "so they can help people find their way back to the truth, just like he did." Rebecca, whose work with healthcare professionals had expanded to address systemic issues in medical ethics, organized a gathering of medical practitioners whose lives had been touched by the Max Protocol. Among them was a reformed doctor who had once been involved in pharmaceutical fraud but had found redemption through the program. Max didn't just expose wrongdoing, the doctor shared, his voice thick with emotion. He showed us a way back to our original purpose as healers. These dogs remind us that true healing requires both skill and absolute integrity. Father Michael, who had witnessed the beginning of this journey at St. Augustine Cathedral, presided over a unique interfaith ceremony in the healing garden. Religious leaders from various traditions gathered to honor the profound spiritual lessons that had emerged from Max's legacy. In ancient texts across all traditions, Father Michael observed, we find references to animals as divine messengers. Max has helped us understand that these weren't just metaphors. They were observations of a deeper truth about the connection between all living beings. Sarah's daughter, now a wise beyond her years 4-year-old, spent hours sitting quietly with Max, sometimes appearing to communicate with him in ways that transcended ordinary understanding. When asked what they discussed, she simply smiled and said, "He's teaching me how to listen with my whole heart, not just my ears." The scientific implications of Max's final days continued to astound researchers. Dr. Patel's neurological studies showed that dogs who spent time with Max during this period developed enhanced capabilities in detecting both physical and emotional distress in patients. It's as if he's passing on not just knowledge, but a fundamental attunement to truth itself, Dr. Patel explained. We're seeing changes in their neural patterns that suggest a deeper level of perception is being activated. The Global Institute had prepared for this moment by implementing what they called the Legacy Protocol, a systematic way of preserving and transmitting the wisdom that Max had demonstrated throughout his life. Young therapy dogs would spend time with him in carefully structured sessions, while advanced monitoring equipment recorded subtle changes in their brain patterns and behavior. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, whose work on barrier-free communication had revolutionized therapy dog programs during the global health crisis, discovered something remarkable in these interactions. The young dogs weren't just learning specific behaviors, they were developing an enhanced capacity for what she termed truth resonance. These dogs are learning to detect not just deception, Dr. Tanaka explained, but the subtle variations in human consciousness that precede ethical choices. They're becoming guardians not just of physical safety, but of moral truth. As Max's strength gradually faded, something extraordinary began happening in hospitals and healthcare facilities worldwide. Therapy dogs, trained under the Max protocol, started exhibiting new levels of intuitive understanding, as if carrying forward his legacy in real time. In a children's hospital in Sydney, a therapy dog named Hope detected a nurse's growing addiction problem before it could impact patient care, leading to early intervention and support rather than punishment. In a clinic in Cape Town, another therapy dog named Truth helped expose a counterfeit medication ring that had evaded traditional security measures. It's as if Max's gift is multiplying, observed Dr. Rodriguez from the FBI's Healthcare Fraud Division. These dogs aren't just following training protocols, they're manifesting a deeper understanding of human nature and the complexities of truth. The World Health Organization, recognizing the profound implications of these developments, fast-tracked the implementation of the Max protocol in healthcare facilities worldwide. The program's success in preventing healthcare fraud while promoting healing had proven too significant to ignore. What we're seeing explained WHO Director Dr. Maria Santos, is not just a security measure or a therapy program. It's a fundamental shift in how we approach healthcare ethics and patient protection. On Max's final day, as the autumn sun painted the healing garden in gold and crimson, something remarkable occurred. The quantum monitoring equipment Dr. Kovac had installed recorded unprecedented levels of coherence, not just in Max, but in all the therapy dogs present in the garden. It's as if they're all connected in a field of pure consciousness, Dr. Kovac whispered, watching the readings with tears in her eyes. The barriers between individual awareness are dissolving into something larger, something we barely have the language to describe. Sarah sat with Max in his final moments, her daughter curled up beside them, while therapy dogs from around the world maintained a quiet vigil. The scene was captured by the Institute's photographers, though many would later swear the images showed something more than just physical light surrounding the gathering. Some might call it a coincidence. Father Michael would later reflect that Max chose to leave us just as the sun painted the world in the same colors that had streamed through the cathedral windows on that fateful wedding day. But I believe it was his final lesson, showing us that endings can be just as beautiful as beginnings if they serve the cause of truth. Max's legacy lived on not just in protocols and programs, but in the fundamental way humanity had begun to understand the relationship between truth, healing, and the wisdom of hearts that never learned to deceive. The Global Institute established the Max Memorial Fellowship, supporting research into the deeper capabilities of therapy dogs and their role in promoting ethical healthcare worldwide. Sarah, watching the next generation of therapy dogs work, with patience while her daughter grew into her own unique gifts of perception, often reflected on how a moment of crisis had transformed into a worldwide movement for truth and healing. Max didn't just save me from a fraudulent marriage, she would tell new handlers in the program. He showed us all that sometimes the purest wisdom comes from hearts that never learned to lie, and that love sometimes requires the courage to bark out the truth, even when the whole world seems determined to celebrate a lie. As the sun set, on Max's final day, a new generation of therapy dogs carried his legacy forward, their pure hearts continuing to guide humanity toward a deeper understanding of truth, healing, and the extraordinary wisdom that can come from the most unexpected sources. 10 years after the wedding that never was, the impact of Max's legacy had evolved in ways no one could have predicted. The Global Institute for Animal-Assisted Healthcare Security had become a beacon of innovation, but it was the next generation of therapy dogs that would reveal the true depth of Max's influence. Dr. Maya Patel's groundbreaking research at Stanford had taken an extraordinary turn. Working with children who had grown up in the Max's Cubs program, she discovered that their enhanced emotional intelligence had begun manifesting in unprecedented ways. These young people, now teenagers, showed remarkable abilities in detecting truth and promoting healing in their communities. What we're seeing isn't just enhanced empathy, Dr. Patel explained during a presentation at the World Consciousness Summit. These young people have developed what we might call truth sensitivity, an ability to perceive authenticity and deception that rivals or even exceeds that of our therapy dogs. Sarah and Dr. Chen's daughter, now 10 years old, had become a bridge between the human and canine worlds. Her natural ability to communicate with therapy dogs had evolved into something extraordinary, She could explain complex emotional dynamics to handlers in ways that transformed their understanding of the human-animal bond. "She doesn't just understand the dogs," observed Dr. Rodriguez, who had continued his work with the FBI's healthcare fraud division. "She understands the underlying patterns of truth and deception that the dogs perceive. It's as if Max's gift didn't end with his passing. It evolved." The scientific community was revolutionized by Dr. Elena Kovac's continued research into quantum consciousness. The patterns she had observed during Max's final days had led to a deeper understanding of how consciousness operated across species barriers. Her work with CERN had expanded to include a dedicated facility for studying what she termed trans-species quantum coherence. "What Max showed us was just the beginning," Dr. Kovac explained during a breakthrough presentation. "These patterns of consciousness aren't limited to individual species. They're part of a larger field of awareness that we're only beginning to understand." Emily's work with trauma survivors had evolved into a comprehensive approach to healing that combined insights from both human and canine perception. The therapy dogs trained under what became known as the Max Legacy Protocol showed an even deeper understanding of human psychological states than their predecessors. "These dogs aren't just detecting trauma," Emily explained at an international psychology conference. "They're helping us understand how trauma moves through generations and communities. They're showing us paths to healing that we never knew existed." Rebecca's work with healthcare professionals had expanded to address systemic issues in medical ethics on a global scale. The therapy dog program had become an integral part of medical education worldwide, with students learning not just technical skills, but the deeper wisdom of healing with integrity. "What these dogs teach us," Rebecca shared during a graduation ceremony at Harvard Medical School, "is that healing isn't just about knowledge or skill. It's about maintaining an unwavering commitment to truth and compassion, even in the face of systemic pressures." Father Michael's interfaith initiative had grown into a worldwide movement exploring the spiritual dimensions of animal-assisted healing. The Healing Heart Sanctuary model had been adopted by religious institutions across cultures, creating spaces where spiritual wisdom and animal intuition could combine to address deeper questions of ethics and healing. "What we're witnessing," Father Michael observed during an interfaith congress in Jerusalem, "is the fulfillment of ancient prophecies about a time when wisdom would flow through unexpected channels, healing the divisions between species and faiths." The Global Institute's work with crisis zones had led to an unprecedented breakthrough in conflict resolution. Therapy dog teams had become essential components of peace-building efforts. Their ability to detect deception and promote trust, proving invaluable in negotiations between conflicting parties. Dr. Amina Omar, now heading the United Nations Peace and Reconciliation Commission, reported extraordinary success in using therapy dogs to facilitate dialogue between previously hostile groups. "These dogs create a space of authentic communication," she explained. "They help people move past ingrained patterns of deception and distrust." The technology sector had been transformed by insights gained from studying therapy dog cognition. A new field of AI development, based on what researchers called canine emotional architecture, was producing systems that could better understand and support human ethical decision-making. "We're not trying to replicate what these dogs do," explained Dr. Chen during a tech innovation summit. We're learning from their way of processing information to create tools that can support their work and extend their impact. Dutim, Sarah's personal journey had come full circle when she was invited to establish a new branch of the Global Institute at St. Augustine Cathedral, where Max's bark had first exposed the truth. The cathedral's historic grounds now housed a cutting-edge research facility dedicated to understanding the deeper connections between spiritual wisdom and animal intuition. Standing here, Sarah reflected during the facility's opening ceremony, I'm reminded that truth sometimes comes to us in unexpected forms. Max's bark that day wasn't just about stopping a wedding, it was about awakening us to deeper forms of wisdom. The program's success in healthcare settings had led to unexpected applications in other fields. The legal system had begun incorporating therapy dog teams into courtroom proceedings, finding that their presence not only provided emotional support, but helped create an atmosphere of truth-telling. These dogs changed the entire dynamic of legal proceedings, explained Justice Maria Hernandez of the International Court of Justice. They remind us that justice isn't just about rules and procedures, it's about creating spaces where truth can emerge. The scientific understanding of canine intuition had been revolutionized by Dr. Yuki Tanaka's continued research into barrier-free communication. Her work had revealed that therapy dogs could detect patterns of deception across digital platforms, opening new frontiers in cybersecurity and online healthcare protection. What we're discovering, Dr. Tanaka shared during a cybersecurity conference in Tokyo, is that these dogs' ability to detect truth and deception transcends physical presence. They're showing us how integrity manifests in ways we never imagined. The MAX protocol had evolved into a comprehensive framework for understanding how truth and healing operated across species boundaries. The next generation of therapy dogs showed even greater abilities in detecting not just immediate deception, but potential future ethical breaches. These dogs aren't just reacting to present circumstances, observed Dr. Patel. They're helping us understand how patterns of truth and deception develop over time, allowing us to address potential problems before they manifest. As the Global Institute prepared to mark its 10th anniversary, the impact of Max's legacy continued to expand in unexpected ways. The quantum consciousness patterns Dr. Kovac had observed during his final days had become the foundation for a new understanding of how wisdom could be transmitted across generations and species. What Max initiated, Dr. Kovac explained, wasn't just a program or protocol. It was the beginning of a fundamental shift in how we understand consciousness, truth, and the interconnected nature of all living beings. Sarah's daughter, working with the newest generation of therapy dogs, had begun developing what she called truth circles, spaces where humans and dogs could work together to address complex ethical challenges in healthcare and beyond. What these dogs show us, she explained with wisdom beyond her years, is that truth isn't just about facts or rules. It's about creating spaces where healing can happen, where hearts can speak without fear, and where wisdom can flow freely between all beings. As the sun set on another day at the Global Institute, the legacy of a dog's bark in a cathedral continued to echo through the world, reminding humanity that sometimes the purest wisdom comes from hearts that never learn to deceive, and that love sometimes requires the courage to speak truth, even when the whole world seems determined to embrace illusion. 15 years after the wedding that never was, a groundbreaking ceremony took place at the Global Institute for Animal-Assisted Healthcare Security. The occasion marked not just the dedication of the Max Memorial Center for Interspecies Wisdom, but the unveiling of a discovery that would transform humanity's understanding of consciousness, truth, and healing. Dr. Eleanor, collaborating with a team of quantum physicists and consciousness researchers, had finally decoded the patterns she'd first observed during Max's final days. What they revealed was extraordinary, a fundamental mechanism by which pure intention could influence physical reality at the quantum level. "What we've discovered," Dr. Kovach announced to an assembly of scientists, spiritual leaders, and therapy dog handlers from around the world, is that the purity of intention we observed in therapy dogs actually creates coherent fields of consciousness that can influence physical systems. These dogs aren't just detecting truth, they're actively strengthening it in the fabric of reality itself. Sarah's daughter, now 15 and heading her own research division at the Institute, had developed what she called the resonance protocol, a method for helping humans access the same pure awareness that came naturally to therapy dogs. Working with a new generation of handlers and their canine partners, she was teaching people to perceive truth and healing in ways that transcended ordinary consciousness. What Max showed us wasn't just about stopping deception, she explained during a TED Talk that would be viewed by millions. He showed us that there's a way of being in the world that transcends our learned patterns of confusion and self-deception. These dogs live in that state naturally, and they can show us how to find our way back to it. The Global Institute had expanded far beyond its original focus on healthcare security. Under Sarah and Dr. Chen's leadership, it had become a center for studying what they termed conscious evolution, the way interaction between humans and therapy dogs was actually accelerating the development of human emotional and spiritual capabilities. Emily's work with trauma survivors had led to another breakthrough. Working with children who had grown up in the Max's Cubs program, she discovered that exposure to therapy dogs from an early age didn't just enhance emotional intelligence, it activated latent human capabilities for perceiving truth and promoting healing. These young people, Emily reported at a conference on human potential, aren't just good at detecting deception. They're developing abilities that look remarkably like what we once considered supernatural. Direct knowing, profound empathy, the ability to facilitate healing through presence alone. The implications for healthcare were revolutionary. Hospitals implementing the evolved Max protocol reported not just decreased instances of fraud and abuse, but accelerated healing rates, reduced medication needs, and what some were calling spontaneous ethical awakening among staff members. Rebecca's work with healthcare professionals had expanded into what she called ethical evolution acceleration. The presence of therapy dogs in medical settings wasn't just preventing misconduct, it was actively promoting the development of higher ethical awareness among medical practitioners. What we're seeing, Rebecca explained during a medical ethics symposium at Oxford, is that regular interaction with these dogs actually changes how healthcare workers perceive their role. They're not just learning to avoid wrongdoing, they're discovering a deeper way of being in service to healing. Father Michael's interfaith initiative had evolved into a global movement, studying what he called trans-species spirituality. Religious leaders from various traditions were discovering that therapy dogs could help people access deeper states of spiritual awareness and ethical clarity. These dogs, Father Michael observed during an interfaith gathering at the Vatican, are helping us understand what the mystics of all traditions have been trying to tell us, that there's a way of perceiving reality that transcends our ordinary divided consciousness. The scientific understanding of canine intuition had been revolutionized by Dr. Yuki Tanaka's research into what she called field effects of truth. Her work demonstrated that therapy dogs didn't just detect deception, they actually generated fields of coherence that made sustained deception more difficult to maintain. It's as if these dogs create spaces where truth naturally wants to emerge, Dr. Tanaka explained. They're not just detecting lies, they're actively strengthening the connection between consciousness and reality itself. The implications extended far beyond healthcare. Governments and international organizations had begun incorporating therapy dog teams into peace negotiations, finding that their presence facilitated breakthrough moments in even the most intractable conflicts. Dr. Amina Omar, working with the United Nations, reported extraordinary success in using therapy dogs to facilitate truth and reconciliation processes in post-conflict zones. These dogs create a field of trust that makes it easier for people to move beyond old patterns of deception and revenge, she explained. The technology sector had been transformed by insights gained from studying therapy dog cognition, a new generation of AI systems based on what researchers called pure intention architecture was helping create digital environments that promoted truth and ethical behavior rather than manipulation and deception. The legal system had undergone its own revolution. Courtrooms implementing the Max Protocol reported not just more accurate testimony, but what some called spontaneous truth emergence, witnesses and defendants feeling unexpectedly compelled to speak truth in the presence of therapy dogs. Sarah's personal journey had come full circle when she was invited to establish a new kind of educational institution, one that would combine the best of human knowledge with the wisdom demonstrated by therapy dogs. The Max Academy for Conscious Evolution became a model for a new kind of learning that integrated intellectual understanding with direct perception of truth. The quantum consciousness patterns Dr. Kovac had first observed during Max's final days had led to a fundamental revision of scientific understanding. The presence of therapy dogs wasn't just influencing individual behavior, it was actually strengthening what physicists called truth-coherent quantum states in physical reality itself. As the Global Institute prepared to mark its 15th anniversary, a new understanding was emerging about what Max's bark in that cathedral had really initiated. It wasn't just about exposing one deception or preventing one mistake. It was about awakening humanity to deeper possibilities for truth, healing, and conscious evolution. What Max showed us, Sarah reflected during the anniversary celebration, wasn't just about the wisdom of dogs. It was about the potential that exists when any being maintains absolute purity of intention. These dogs aren't just helping us detect truth, they're showing us how to live in it. The next generation of therapy dogs showed even more remarkable abilities. Working with handlers trained in the resonance protocol, They were helping create what researchers called fields of accelerated evolution, spaces where human consciousness naturally oriented toward truth and healing. Dr. Patel's research with the children of the Max's Cubs program had revealed something extraordinary. These young people weren't just developing enhanced abilities, they were manifesting what appeared to be the next step in human evolution, a way of being that integrated the best of human intelligence with the pure awareness demonstrated by therapy dogs. As the sun set on the dedication ceremony for the Max Memorial Center, Sarah watched her daughter working with a group of young therapy dogs and their handlers. The scene seemed to shimmer with possibility, as if the boundary between species was dissolving into a larger field of conscious evolution. "Some might call it coincidence," Father Michael observed, watching the scene, "that a dog's bark in a cathedral 15 years ago led to all of this. But I believe it was the first note in a symphony of consciousness that's still unfolding, a reminder that truth, love, and healing are not separate things, but different aspects of the same fundamental reality." The legacy of that fateful wedding day continued to evolve, touching lives in ways that transcended ordinary understanding. What had begun with a dog's courage to bark out truth had become a worldwide awakening to deeper possibilities for consciousness, healing, and human potential. As darkness fell and stars appeared above the Global Institute, the newest generation of therapy dogs and their human partners continued their work, carrying forward Max's legacy while opening new frontiers of possibility. They were living proof that sometimes the purest wisdom comes from hearts that never learned to deceive, and that love sometimes requires the courage to bark out truth, even when the whole world seems determined to celebrate illusion. The story of the dog who barked at a wedding had become more than just an inspiring tale. It had become a catalyst for human evolution, a reminder that truth and love are not abstract concepts, but living forces that can transform reality itself, especially when they flow through hearts pure enough to recognize and serve them without hesitation or fear. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.